Hey gang, it's time for another CirdecSongs chat. I've been enjoying these, and I know I'm really going to enjoy today's issue. I want it noted for the record that I put this shirt on from Progstock 2023 in New Jersey completely by accident today. I wasn't even thinking about it. As it turns out, today's guest was my roommate at Progstock 2023. He's one of the best bass players I've ever heard in Chicago. He played in a killer band, and now he has gone out on his own. He is Brian Kovacs. How are you doing today, sir?
Well, you could have told me that you did that intentionally, and I would have been like, "Aw."
But it's Freudian. It's Freudian. That's my thing. It's completely Freudian. And like I said earlier, I'm really digging that microphone you're using. It's like I'm interviewing Elvis or something. But,
I know. This is funny enough. This was a present that I gave to my girlfriend during COVID because we were doing live streams, and she wanted something old timey looking.
Well, there you go.
So there you have it.
That works. You know, they use something like that in one of the droids in Star Wars, and I saw it. I'm like, I know what that is. That's what
it does. This looks like the mouth of one of the droids.
Exactly.
I think the Bacta tank droid. I'm a geek.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, if that sort of thing, that is where it is. So, and this is why we're good roommates, because we're just
true story.
Just nerding out over here. That's what works for me.
That was such a good time, and it was such an interesting experience. Like we never really saw each other during the day, for the most part.
I'm taking pictures and running all over the stage and what have you, and you're off.
I mean, you talk about a commitment to journalism. I mean, you with your broken back, with the brace on.
Yes.
3 solid days of listening to prog music, taking pictures and writing reviews. I was very impressed with your work ethic, sir.
Well, I appreciate it.
Questioning your intelligence level, but
that comes from being a cop for 25 years. Sanity goes out the window, you know. Remember, we were dumb enough to run towards the gunfight.
We had lunch with Chester Thompson. That was an incredible experience.
That was awesome. That was probably the last time I'm really going to geek out in front of a musician, because I've met my hero in Adrian Ballou, and I've talked to Steve Vai in person, all that kind of stuff. It's just like, they're just people. You know, that's the bottom line. They're just people. But
sitting down with Chester was so fascinating because, you know, I just started asking him about, like, you know, what's some of the most interesting places that you've been, you know, because I can't remember if I had just come off of a tour or if I was going on it after that shortly, but, you know, he started talking to me about, you know, when Genesis was touring and in South America and having to watch out for the gang areas and stuff like that. And then it progressed into, you know, him talking about, you know, being in cover bands in the 60s.
Yeah.
And, you know, they would play a venue, go pack up their stuff, try to come around to come in to eat at said venue, and they wouldn't let them in.
Wow.
So they had to go across the tracks and go find a place to eat across the tracks, because every place was always across the tracks. And that was a very just like eye-opening moment. You know, you don't realize in that man's lifetime what he's seen and just how fragile our civil rights are.
Yeah.
And how recently, you know, we don't think about that.
Yeah. I mean, touring is you don't have a whole lot of time to adjust to whatever situation you get into. And to me, the only people who get to see more of the world are probably in the military, you know, because I wound up stationed in South Carolina, and I wound up doing duties in Virginia and in North Carolina and Florida and Puerto Rico. And then ultimately I was transferred to Japan, you know, so it's just landing in these other cultures and trying to figure out what it is they're doing. It takes time to adjust, you know, and I had 2 years. Chester had 2 days, tops. So, and I really enjoyed talking to him after you had to leave. I sat there and we talked about books. We talked about history, you know, because I finally figured out, and take this note down, kids, if you really want to appeal to a musician when you talk to them, do not talk about their music. Find out what they're interested in. Talk about that. You know,
and I may have intentionally set up a moment where I could leave you with Chester,
for which I thank you. Because I certainly wasn't expecting it. You know, it's like, oh my God, I'm sitting across the table from Chester Thompson, and he's talking
Cedric,
to me.
Can you get Chester back to where he needs to be after this? I'm going to ask you that favor.
I believe I can manage that. Yeah, I know exactly where the venue is, and we'll get him over there, no problem. But it was a great experience. I wish you could have been there for 24. There was some really really good bands there. Any thoughts of going this year?
I don't think so at this point. unless something frees up last minute. But I mean, the Progstock is always a great experience.
Yeah.
I've done, with the band I used to be in, we did that festival, we did Prog Power, and got to open for Marillion.
Yeah.
At their weekend, which was amazing. So, but yeah, those festivals are huge for bands that aren't as well known, and getting those bands in front of people. And I know it's a lot of times now there's a kind of a steady crew, steady stable of artists that are playing Progstock, but it just like with anything, it turns into a family reunion.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's more, I feel there gets to be a certain point where it becomes more about the people that you're there with, shoulder to shoulder, than about the artists that are on the stage.
Yeah. And
which is a very cool thing.
The place, it turns out to be good for my ego. Because, especially the 23. I mean, people were just walking up to me, hey, I follow you on Facebook, or hey, I saw your YouTube channel, or I bought a copy of your book, and sitting outside at one of the picnic tables, just trying to straighten out my notes. Next thing, I've got 3 other people sitting with me, just stoking my ego. So,
well, it was great because as a volunteer working on that festival, and and then they pair you up into the rooms and stuff, and I got a message. Hey, do you know Cedric? Absolutely, I know Cedric. Yes, I will room with Cedric.
Yes, and I appreciate that because we're going to talk at some point while we're up here yammering. We're going to talk about your bass tone, which still blows my mind. But you have been rather busy lately. You were in a killer band, the Cyberiam. That's how I discovered you. Were you guys opening for Riverside for that gig at?
Yes, I believe so. So we did 2 duo tours. Keith and I did with we did the first one with the Pineapple Thief. That was a shorter run because they were kind of rotating bands. So we did I want to say we did like 8 shows with them. And then funny enough, we had to jump off of that tour in order to get to Prog Power. We played Prog Power in Atlanta, and that was why we had to leave that tour. And then we did 5 weeks with Riverside. And those guys are like my brothers. I absolutely, they welcomed us in, and we just had such an amazing time on tour with Riverside. We were in the bus with them, and just got to know those guys, and got to chat with them on a human level. And
nice.
Yeah, and it was such a great experience, and Mariusz and I, occasionally flip flopping basses and messing around back and forth. It was just a great time.
That's awesome. That is awesome. I remember I got there late, which is unusual for me. And the bottom lounge is a standing venue, and I've got a wrecked back, so I like to get up front so I can grab onto the safety gate that's usually sitting there.
Yeah.
And I wound up way off to the right side because I can lean on a wall to just stand up. But by the time I got there and got situated, I'm just listening and I'm like, oh, that bass tone, geez, where is that? Where is that coming from?
So, well, I mean, obviously, not obviously, I guess, but to some folks, I started playing bass because of Rush.
Good reason.
I'd heard, I was listening, I was a fan, and this was, I think sometime around like 8th grade was when I started listening to Rush, and then, I remember for like a year, like I was just obsessed, and I was like, I cannot figure out what's happening here. I don't know what's the guitar, I don't know what's the bass, but I know that this guy must be doing something different.
Yeah.
And then 2 days before my sophomore year of high school, my parents are like, you need to get involved with something this year, as parents do.
Yes.
You need to get involved with something. And my mother, thinking that I'm going to join football or something like that because I'm, 6'3" and, close to 300 pounds.
We could make a tight end out of you. That could happen.
So that was the thought, was that, they're like, you need to get involved with something. And I was like, okay, I want to play bass. And number one, my mother didn't even know what that was. Number two, my father, to his credit, immediately said, okay, we'll go to the store tomorrow. We'll go check it out.
Nice.
So he took me, and this was like 2 days before my sophomore year of high school. He took me and got me my first bass. And it's kind of interesting because I didn't know this until after he passed. He just passed about 1.5 years ago, actually coming up on 2 years. And he, as I was going through his stuff after he passed, I did not realize that he actually had studied music in high school, and it was his first dream was to become a musician.
Nice.
And then he went into the service after high school. He sang in the Air Force choir. But beyond that,
we have Air Force in common. I didn't sing in the choir, but I was an Air Force guy too. So.
Yeah. But after he came back, he said that life happened, and he met my mom and went in that direction, and so he didn't pursue it. So it was one of those things that I always felt his encouragement from it, never really knew why, and then to find out only after he had passed why.
But it's just great to know you have parents behind you, because usually the kind of, I don't want you to do this, I want you to do that, or why are you wasting time doing that? You're never gonna get anywhere with that kind of thing. So it's just how much.
No, he was very much always even later in life when I was doing other things. I worked in radio for 12 years. I did other things that where music was not my focus. And he was always like, keep playing, please keep playing, and the thing is after my radio career was over, and I was a stay-at-home dad at the time, and I was informed that I was getting a divorce.
Splendid.
Yeah, when that happened, that was the thing where I said, okay, now I'm in my 30s, I'm divorced, I'm starting over again. Why not go back to what plan A was in the first place and try to make a go of this? So then I did become a professional musician. I was doing that for, almost better part of 2 decades. But in Chicago, as it is, to make a living, you got to play covers. People want to hear what they're familiar with.
Yeah, that's one of the wildest and most sensible things I know. I know that I heard was a promoter or a club owner when a band member came up and said, "Hey, we want to do this, and we want to give the people what they want." And he said, "People don't know what they want; they want what they know." Mm-hmm. So if that means playing Mustang Sally 18,000 times, or Freebird or whatever, you just gotta.
My ongoing joke with the cover band scene is the 2 songs that every band plays that I refused to play in my band when I had my own 80s cover band is "Don't Stop Believing" by Journey and "Jesse's Girl."
I could see that.
those are the 2 songs that every band plays. Those are the 2 songs that everybody requests, and I'm like, why would I do it if every other band in the world is doing it? They've got it covered.
They've already beaten it into the ground. Do we need to go any further with that? The industry has really changed over the last 20 years, let's just say.
I was just having this conversation, and the thing about it is that the dream that I had when I was young of being a musician, that does not exist anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't work the way that when we were doing our stuff in the 90s, we thought, hey, bands are getting signed and all this stuff. That's not what happens anymore. Now you need to be a YouTube sensation on your own before you get anywhere with anybody.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I said YouTube. I meant TikTok.
TikTok, yeah. Both of them work usually. Yeah. I hope, because hoping my TikTok page. I have a TikTok page, ladies and gentlemen. It's under CirdecSongs. Would pick up a decent following and what have you. I'm trying to chase the youth. The adults ruin Facebook, and Instagram's probably on the edge. So TikTok and Snapchat, and I think there's another new one out there. It's just, I'm always going to be a step behind, but you gotta.
Can I old guy grumble for a second? I still don't get Snapchat.
I don't either. I still
don't get it. I know that's what all the kids use now, and I'm like, I didn't get it in the first place. I still don't get it now, even though they've made changes. It still doesn't make sense to me.
Not a clue. We're both doing old guy rants. I just posted on Facebook today a picture of a T-shirt that said Gen X 1965 to 1980, and then the motto on the bottom was "We don't care." So I can feel that you were raised on hose water and neglect.
Yeah. So. Well, see, I'm in an interesting. I'm in this little subsection. So I was born in 1977, and there is a pocket generation from 1977 and 1983.
Okay.
And they're calling it Zennials. It's a cross between Gen X and millennials.
Interesting.
So it's an X, but it's Zennials or Xenial, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
But it's this interesting thing of those particular years that I grew up in is we have a very unique childhood, and you had this analog childhood and this digital adulthood, and also this was we were in the crux of when advertising and cartoons were the same thing.
Yeah.
So like we were in the breath of G.I. Joe and Transformers and all of those things that were just like we're like, oh, you need to collect them all, you know. And
it's brutal product placement is what they're doing, and you can't see they didn't do that with Speed Racer and Ultraman and Johnny Sacco and the Flying Robot, but you know, you always got the commercials for toys and what have you, especially on Saturdays when you're watching Bugs Bunny and what have you. So next thing you know, you're seeing all the Mattel toys and all the Tonka toys and what have you. It's like, Dad, can I get one of those for my birthday? You know?
But that's the interesting thing is then a couple of years ago is that the Zennials were the people who were the decision makers.
Yeah.
And so now we have like all of my life, I wanted Marvel things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now we can't get away from them.
They do kind of dominate the scene, don't they?
You know, the same thing with Star Wars. Star Wars was such a big deal to my generation, and now I'm like,
you and me both.
It's too much. Can we rewind?
Yeah, and my confession is I have a small boatload of comic book graphic novels over here now. I slide over to DC for Batman and Superman, but yeah, I've got Miles Morales as Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man, and I've got a big hardback tome of Darth Vader, and what have you. It's crazy. And I sit back thinking, God, I need something to read. Just come into my office for crying out loud. The library is right here.
I go back to the original Secret Wars.
Oh, nice.
The one from the 80s where Spider-Man got his black costume. I know that they redid Secret Wars and it's a whole new thing. And I know the new movies are going to be going at a whole different angle with that. But
we'll see. We'll see. Some of the movies have been great, but some of the more recent ones just haven't grabbed me the same way. But what are you going to do? They're going to make their money. And matter of fact, the new Captain America just dropped on Disney. So I'm like, well, guess I know what I'm doing this evening. So
okay. All right.
I'll make my dinner and see where this goes.
All right. Well, we got to speed up this interview because Cedric's got to get to TV watching.
It's available 24/7. It'll be okay.
There's only so many hours in the day, Cedric.
Shh, tell me about it. Tell me about it. And they move quickly. Ever since I got off the force, retirement time moves fast. I mean, you've got one minute I'm just getting out of bed and sitting on the couch to watch the news. Next thing I know, it's 7:00 in the evening. It's what the hell?
Exactly.
Where did my day go? I just plugged in my guitar and whatnot to get a little practice in before we chatted. Because the calluses are starting to form and what have you. So which is
I know, and I know you
nice.
you'd texted me. We need to get together. You were asking about bass tone stuff.
Yes. I need a bass lesson. I've learned 7 or 8 tunes, and most of them from Bowie, modern day Bowie, and it just surprised me how few notes Gail Ann Dorsey is using to get that sound.
It's not about the number of notes; it's where she puts them.
Yep. And once I figured that out, and it comes down to dynamics. You play Heart's Filthy Lesson, you gotta use your thumb. And the bad news about that is that I have a 5-string, so I have to actually target my thumb to make sure I hit it. I got to deaden that low B string that I love so much, and then target the E string to make it.
I recently switched to the 5. Well, I say recently, but only because for most of my life I was a jazz bass guy, because the Geddy Lee thing. But I jazz bass and P bass always the go-tos. But I came across the Ibanez EHB, which is the headless ones, and I just fell in love with it. And so the last Cyberiam album, I used it on it. That whole thing, I used it on all of my album. Is a 5-string, and it I played a 6 for a while in the 90s, so it wasn't completely foreign to me to have that low B there, but I just love it now, and it's that thing where it's like once you have it, I start overusing it because I'm just like, well, it's not in a bad way, because as a bass player, I felt like the way that my bass playing was very aggressive. There was a lot going on, and now I am very content with hitting that low note and just letting it ride.
It's the Tony Levin effect, I think, is what it is. But
True.
In fact, I'm stuck on. I have to go one level below, but the Sterling Music Man is making me very happy. And I said for my birthday in November, I'm going to get another bass. 4 strings. I was going jazz or P bass, jazz or P bass, jazz or P bass, and then I clicked back on Music Man just for fun, and that bass can replicate a lot of those sounds. And I'm already used to the body style and the neck. I'm like, well, I guess I'm a Music Man guy now. So
true story. And it's all about the size of your hands too, because I like the jazz bass neck is very skinny.
Yeah.
Which is great for speed.
Right.
And the P bass is like a log. But
that's what I heard.
But but it affects the way that you play, because if I play a P bass, I tend to play with my thumb.
Okay.
And I actually kind of rest my hand, and I'll play a lot like this, and it's a slower approach to it. But with the jazz bass, I'm going nuts like this. So
it's got I love the P bass sound though. When I watch Sting with the Police or somebody like that. I mean, just
that's my number. I mean, Geddy Lee and Sting. Those are my two top guys as far as I mean, in general, everything, but as bass players, and then Sting more so for the songwriting.
Yeah.
I mean, I love his bass playing as well, but I think that was something that definitely I gravitated towards and appreciated what he was doing, and I still do to this day.
In all the bands we're talking about, there's no weak link in these bands. I mean, all these guys are virtuosos on their instruments. Whether it's the Police or Rush or King Crimson, what have you. These cats can play.
Oh yeah.
Bottom line, they can play.
See, and that's kind of the interesting thing is I had this thing kind of happen to me recently. I mean, I've been working through a lot of stuff. I've been working through my own triggers and things, and it wasn't until I had gotten into my 40s that I realized I had an extremely low self-esteem.
Yeah.
And follow me on this. I know that this is going to be like, where is he going with this?
I don't know. It sounds like what I'm going through. So, go ahead.
So I took a test, and it was like, okay, check off out of these 50 items, how many of these items do you feel apply to you?
Yeah.
And it was this self-esteem test. And it's, so I go through the test, I take the thing, check them off, and then it gets to the end and it goes, okay, so if you've checked off 0 to 2, you have great self-esteem. If you checked off this to this, you're this to this. If you've checked off more than 12, you have extremely low self-esteem.
Ooh, yeah.
I checked off 38 of the 50.
Wow. Wow.
So in that moment, I was like,
what happens? Yeah,
I was like, okay, so this is telling me something. And so the thing is that what it made me realize is why I was playing music.
Yeah.
And when I started playing music, so I told you I started like 2 days before my sophomore year. This was like August, and by November I was in a rock band with my buddies, including Tommy from the Cyberiam.
So you knew. You found it, you found your niche, and you were ready to.
And then I was in jazz band in high school for my junior year and my senior year, and I had a natural aptitude for it.
Nice.
And so for me, I think what it was, hey guys, look, I have value. I can play this thing. I can sing these notes. Will you love me now because I can do all this stuff,
Yeah.
And that was my motivation. And so after I went through this epiphany of realizing why I was the way that I was, and what had been programmed into me from a young age was that I needed to care about what other people thought of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was like everything in my life. What are people going to think? People. But then it's like when I had to step away, I was like, well, who is people? Who is that?
See,
it's a faceless mass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We just think in our head, we just go people. And I go, if I really broke it down, whose opinions do I really consider that I should be listening to? And there's like a handful.
Yeah.
Like about 5 people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, those are the opinions that I really am going to listen to as far as what I'm doing.
Yeah. And those are the people And for me, writing about musicians and talking to musicians, I want them to feel, I want them to say I'm competent. At least, and I had a couple of musicians who actually read my book, including Robert Fripp, which freaked me out, but I got nothing but approval, and Robert said, he titled it, I can't be the only one hearing this. He said, no, says Cedric, you're not the only one, so those are, I know exactly what you mean. You want to be, it's validation more than anything else.
Well, I think that was the thing too, was my kind of like my busy playing style and playing prog music in general.
Yeah.
In the first place, like that was a thing. There was a certain, I don't know, a pride maybe of being like, I can do this stuff. I can do it. And at this stage of my life, I had to, once I had gone through that whole thing, like, I mean, I'll say I put my ego away.
Yeah.
Because of the result of this. And like we do as humans, we go to extremes.
Of
So
course.
I probably did a bit too much of that, or to the point where I, you know what I mean? Like I don't have, they say that the fear of that is that you'll lose your drive.
Yeah.
You'll lose your motivation.
Right.
It's not that, but I had to re-examine why I wanted to do music. If it wasn't for me showing I had a self-worth anymore,
Yeah.
then it basically I said, well, it's the connection. And that goes back to something that I can't even remember the story in its entirety, but it went something to the effect of, and this is when I was a child before I even played music. There was a girl, she was going to commit suicide. She heard a song on the radio. The lyrics resonated with her. In that moment, she felt not alone. She felt like somebody else has felt the way that I feel.
That's the most amazing feeling in the world when, when the song talks to you. The song is talking directly to you.
And it prevented that moment. And that's the power of music to me. And I was so floored by that when I heard that story when I was, young. And this is before I played music. And so going back to that, like now at this point, I realize that the music that I make is not for mass consumption.
Yeah.
There's only going to be certain people that like what I'm doing. But I do feel like if I have something that has helped me, and that's what my album is about. My album is about me going from being suicidal for all of my life.
Yeah.
From any time I can remember besides being a small child, to finally coming to a realization of like, oh no, I love life. I want to be here.
Yeah.
Now it's to the point where I've kind of developed a fear of death, and I've never had that before.
Wow.
But that's what my story is about in this whole conversation, and that's why I'm sharing it, is because I'm like, maybe there's somebody else that needs to hear it. Amazingly, I've heard from 2 people who messaged me directly. One that I know, one that I didn't know, and both of them have said that they needed to hear it at the time that they did.
That's awesome.
And so that's why I continue to do music.
Yep.
And moving forward, I think that's you only write what you're into.
Yeah, right.
And so right now, everything that occupies my brain space is, self-discovery. Why do I do the things that I do?
Yeah.
And then, like our bigger place, our place in the universe. I think about my own mortality, about like all those things. And that's what I'm going to talk about moving forward. I just put out a single 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
And it's called They Laughed, You Loved. And it's basically about, it's for my lady.
Yep.
But it's basically, it's a different kind of a love song. And it's about me.
Yeah.
And it's about me being able to become the best version of me that I can be.
Right.
But it's only because she not only allowed me to be, but helped me to be. And all of the things that were used against me in my past, like the fact that I am a highly sensitive person, I feel things very intensely.
Yeah.
And those are things that were used against me in my past. And she's like, no, that's a beautiful thing. Like you are experiencing life in full color.
Agreed.
And so it's things like that I'm trying to put out to the universe to see if hopefully it helps somebody else along the way.
Yeah. And if you can reach one person, who turns it around because of that, that's a definite win. And as for your single, it's not sappy. That's one of the first things I realized. It's still got I'm not going to call it an aggression, but there's something there that keeps you from just falling back on the old tropes of the sad love song or what have you. So it's really,
and that's the thing,
really
is like,
tune.
I felt it was the most beautiful thing I've ever written. And it's not, it's not traditional like you're saying, but to me this is a beautiful thing, and I have this beautiful thing that I want to talk about with it. And it was from the moment I laid my hands on the piano and I heard this thing and I went with it. I knew exactly what I wanted to say, which doesn't always happen.
Right.
A lot of times when I write, it might be the music first, lyrics at a different time, and then kind of marrying them together later. But this was an instance where it just all came together. I saw it in my mind and just went with it.
Nice. And I was going to ask you about your methodology, but before I do that, you were in a pretty good band and decided to branch out on your own. What was the motivation behind that?
Well, that's basically what, kind of what I was just saying now is my motivations at the time that I joined that band were different.
Yeah.
And, I was part of you know, a in your face you know, thing that was, you know, progressive rock, progressive metal, what have you. And, you know, ultimately what it came down to for me was on the last album, there's a song, Mind the Gap.
Yeah.
I wrote that song. I sang the song on the album. That song I had presented to the band 7 years prior.
Wow.
So it took 7 years for that to get on an album.
That can be frustrating, I'd imagine.
Well, and the thing about it is, it's just, there's also just a factor of like, I was not the lead singer of that band. So the words were not my words. They were coming from somebody else. And I always just think that if you're going to attach yourself to something, that you want to be in agreement with what's being said.
Right.
Or be the person saying it. So it just got to the point where there's a lot of music in me that I want to put out.
Yep.
And there's only so much time in this lifetime.
This is very true.
So I had to make the decision of saying like, hey, I've got music that I want to put out, and I want to, and I have my voice that I want to put out because I think I could help people. So I had to make that decision, and I had to say, you know what, I'm going to do this. I love those guys. I'm very happy for them that they've gotten Tom Heslin, who's a fantastic gentleman. I love him. Honest to God, I was hoping that was who they were going to ask to join afterwards. So I'm very happy for those guys. There's no bad blood. There's nothing like that. It's just a matter of like, I'm just at a different place in my life. And it's just, I think that, you know, it's motivations. And I had to, you know, I had a couple band meetings where I was like, you know, why is it that you guys want to do this band? And I had to ask myself the same question. And then when it came down to it, just because of my own thoughts and my own progression of my self-work, I was like, this doesn't seem to be where I fit anymore.
Yeah.
And honestly, I felt like I was holding them back because I have my own ideas of how I want to communicate music to people. And I didn't want to push them in a direction that was where they didn't want to go.
That was
they're
classy.
very successful doing their thing, and I'm putting out my stuff, and that way people who are fans of both of us get double the music now.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
And it's a very classy move. I like asking artists a question that I would love to have asked, say, Radiohead after they finished OK Computer, or Crimson after Discipline, or something like that. Do you know how good your material is once you finish? Do you have that feeling like, I nailed this one? Or is it just kind of this sounds good to me and I can't do anything else with it? Where does your brain go once you hear your finished material?
It depends on the scenario. I mean, if you're talking about what was going on in the Cyberiam, I mean, that is a hive mind. Right. So when you're surrounded by other guys and you're all creating together and there's an excitement surrounding it, and everybody goes, oh, this is great, this is great, this is great. The interesting thing is always coming to the point of putting out the album. Right. And I'm always a big person with set lists. And hence I'm a big person with album order.
you got the proper sequence.
I believe that there is a musical journey that you're taking folks on. So even if something is not a concept album per se, I do believe that there is a flow of how you're taking.
Agreed.
Like when I put together an album order, I'm thinking about a concert experience in the same way. This is how you want to shape the experience for the audience. So
get them up, get them going, cool them off for a second, and then you can gradually pick things up again.
Exactly. And so I think it was just like in that environment, it's you know, everybody's excited and fired up. This stuff's great. This stuff's great. For myself, as I was doing this, most of this album, The Soul Conversation, I'd written it about coming up on 3 years ago almost, and I'd done the initial keyboards and bass and guitars, and then I had recorded the drums. I had recorded the drums with Keith O'Mell, who was my drummer from Kovacs and Company, was my 80s band. And so I had those drum parts recorded, and then we went on tour with Riverside. So most of the work that I did on that album was like I had already recorded everything, and then I was working on mixing and doing all this stuff while we had breaks on the tour. But it took a while. But it's one of those things where, because it was all me, and there's no other input.
Yeah.
other than like I can show it to the other guys on the bus, and I did, like, the sound guy, Tomek, who was, I love the Riverside sound guy, was like, hey, how is this sounding to you? It sounds amazing. Okay, great. I'm moving in the right direction. But there's no, there's nobody else going like, yay, keep going. So
yeah.
for me, it was just, I'm just kind of content with going, this is me. This is who I am. I don't know what's good. But going back to what I was saying before is that you never know what is going to resonate with people.
Right.
And
this
so like on my album in particular, I did all of the guitars except for the last 3 songs.
Yeah.
All of the guitar solos on the last 3 songs, and some of the colors that were added by my friend Tim Pride, who's my guitarist from high school.
Okay.
He actually lives in San Francisco. He's the head of Dolby Atmos Music.
Oh, nice.
And he's one of my best friends, still to this day. And he added these colors to it that I just was blown away by. If you listen to Soul Shine in particular, there's this arpeggiated guitar thing that he starts doing in that very first chorus about halfway through, and it just changes the shape of the whole song, and it sounds like a sunrise. It's amazing.
I like that.
So it's great having somebody else come in those moments. But I thought that those last 3 songs on the album, the ones that I had Tim play on, I was like, these are the 3.
Yeah.
And these are the ones that people are really going to resonate, or are going to resonate with, people are going to love. And usually the rule is you take your best 3 tracks and you put them at the front of the album,
right?
Because you don't know if anybody's going to sit through the rest of it, right? So you want to hit them right hard.
These days, when everybody's just putting together playlists and what have you, and you've got one song to impress somebody.
And sure enough, when I put my album out, everybody was playing the first song, which is Prologue, which is really just setting up the rest of the album. I don't even half of the time I don't consider it a song. I'm just kind of like, this is just kind of setting up everything else, but everybody just plays the first song.
Right.
But those were not the songs. I take that back. Soul Shine, the last song on the album, has definitely been the one that resonates with people the most. It stands on its own, even though this is a concept album that's telling a story across all 8 songs. It is the one that seems to resonate, which is great. But yet the other 2 songs haven't hit as much, at least from album listening. Yeah. Now that we're taking the show into a live setting, I think that's going to change.
Okay.
And I think that there's songs that are going to punch through live in a different way than they do on the album.
Nice.
But we're going to see.
Can't wait to see it myself. But when you bring other people in, you've written this album, you've played everything, and you're bringing other people in to play it live. Mm-hmm. How much leeway do you give musicians, or do you want this thing played as you played it, or do you want to give them a little space to improvise and come up with something on their own?
There's certain things that, I'll take that. Let me rewind. There's a certain attitude, that you're looking for from a hired gun,
right?
I think that for me, the biggest thing for me right now is about finding the right vibe. It's finding the right people. Like, I'm fronting the band, I'm playing the bass, I'm singing these things. I need to know that everybody behind me has got my back.
Right.
And that I don't have to worry about anything. So, that being said, the recruitment process for me is a lot more about, is this person in alignment with the way that I think?
Yeah.
And that more than anything. I mean, for a long time now, I've looked at scenarios and been able to go, okay, here's somebody's strengths, here's somebody's weaknesses. I know how I can work around their weaknesses and show their strengths and let them shine. And that's what I want to do. I want to let these folks shine on stage. It's not about me. It is about the music, but it's not about me in particular. I'd rather shine the spotlight on Rozzy, the 18-year-old over here playing the keyboards and singing her butt off.
Nice.
I've got Ben Lerner on guitar, who locally in Chicago has been playing with a band called Riddle House, a progressive instrumental band for a while.
Okay.
And he's a prime example. He plays the stuff on the album that is on the album. But I said to him, like, hey, look, there's a lot of open space on here. I really only utilized like the guitars in the first half of the album is really kind of on those choruses to really just kind of get some movement and get things chugging. I said, there's a lot of open areas. Feel free to fill them in. and I'll let you know if I hear something that's wonk. And he's done an amazing job of it. He's added colors to the songs that I'm very excited, because the show that we have on June 14th coming up in Aurora, I'm gonna be filming it and recording the audio. So I'm gonna have live versions of these songs with Ben's guitar parts on them. So I'm very excited to get those, because again, he's adding new colors that weren't there before, and that's very exciting. I've got Torian Johnson on the drums. He is a super solid player, and just a great energy to be around, and just another facet of like what's going on with the live show that as things are evolving. And he'll come in too, and like there's the Stream is the third song on the album, which is again seems to be one that resonates with folks, and it kind of starts with this bass part that's kind of bossa nova like.
Yeah,
it's bant, and so when I said that, I just in the rehearsal I just said, oh, it's like a bossa nova type thing, and he's like, oh, okay. And then he actually added more of that bossa feel to it for the live show, and it was different than what was on the album. And I was like, hey, I feel that,
Yep, nice.
So I love the evolution. I mean, the thing is about with songs is that they breathe. They're organic things, and they'll change over time, and that's great. I mean, the whole point is just conveying the message,
right?
Just don't lose the plot, as the kids would say, right?
Exactly. How nervous were you moving? Because you moved from a band where you're playing the bass, and people generally consider the bass player to be off towards the back of the stage next to the drummer. And there are exceptions, of course, but now it's you. So how much of any nervousness was conveyed?
The thing is that's actually me going back to something, because the Cyberiam is honestly the first band that I'd been in that I wasn't the front person.
Oh, okay.
In most other cases, I mean, there's been other instances too, and I'm totally fine with that. My singing in the first place was born out of necessity,
right?
And it was just one of those things. Like, is there anybody else in the room that can do it better? No. Okay, fine, I'll do it. And literally, that's what happened with the first band I was in high school. Like I said, I'd been playing bass for a couple of months, like literally 3 months, I think, and then I was in this band. And we got a PA system. This was in the 90s. It was like a big deal. It was like, oh, we got the PA now, right? So we had a PA system. And then they're like, everybody sing, and let's see how everybody sounds. And we did. And then they went, you're going to be the singer. And I was like, but I just started playing the bass. So from the get-go, I've always had to sing and play the bass at the same time. So it's something that I'm...
And for people who don't play, they need to understand that that's an entirely different concept than playing guitar and singing, where you can play chords and have a little melody in between. Because the first time I took up playing a little bass, and I caught myself trying to sing background with David Bowie, I got so confused. I was kind of like, oh, where are these notes? And I'm trying to sing at the same time. I'm like, you know what, you guys go ahead and do it, because I can't. I'm just trying to keep up here playing bass. So,
well, I spent several years as in a party band, disco, a lot of disco songs in that party band.
Oh yeah,
and that was the one thing that the guys would say to me in the band is they're like, you can go up there and you can sing and you can play the bass, but doing like Brick House, that was interesting. And they're like, not only are you singing it, but then what we would do is we would get to a certain part in the song, and I would just be jawing with the crowd, and I'd still be playing the bass. And they're like, I can understand singing the song, I can understand playing it, but you're just talking to the in whatever cadence you're going to do, and you're still playing the bass line, But that's the thing, is like when you are multitasking, you have to have something on autopilot.
Yeah.
So whatever it may be, if it's a simple singing part, you can put that on autopilot and focus on the bass part. If it's a bass part that you can get under muscle memory, then you do that, and then you can concentrate on the singing. But one of those things has to be on autopilot.
I like that. I love the bass line in David Bowie's Sunday, but it's a 4.5 minute song, and really the rest of the band doesn't show up until like 3:30. Mm-hmm. You've got David singing and David Torn, doing over effects and what have you, and I'm sitting there holding my bass, thinking, I have nothing to do right now.
But that's the interesting thing, is because like for the longest time, and the way that I was writing things was like, it comes from a place of either boredom or thinking that the listener's going to get bored. And so I would change things up all the time. I mean, when we would do Don't Blink with the Cyberiam, I don't think I ever played it the same way twice. I was
Okay.
always just doing. I don't remember what I did in the studio. I'm not going to go back and learn it that way. I'm just going to keep. I know the vibe. I know generally where I was going, so I always kind of just did whatever. Or if I remembered hearing it a certain way, I would just play it that way.
And that's got to bring a certain degree of excitement because when you're playing, for lack of a better phrase, the same songs over and over on tour, you don't want to fall into a rut. So it's got to be fun to switch things up.
Yes, but the thing that I've come to realize in recent time is, well, just within honestly the last couple of years, is really just sitting with something
Yeah.
and playing it. And if I take I could take 2 notes and play those same 2 notes. And if I just keep playing it and keep playing it, and then all of a sudden it becomes hypnotic.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden the feel changes. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, I just found the groove. There it is. Oh, and then it's euphoric.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's just, but then again, that's something that I never did before until now. And now I'm like, the simplicity is beautiful. And that's what like Sting's bass lines.
Yeah.
Do, do, do. It's 2 notes.
Yep. And it sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
What did I do? I learned a Nine Inch Nails track, the Big Come Down, and it's like 3 notes. And I'm like, that's it? What else do I do? I mean, I come from Stanley Clark and, players like that and Jocko and what have you, where they're very, very busy, in a good way. But, okay, now I'm playing these 2 notes here.
But I think there's about the role of the bass player, the traditional role, I think.
Right.
And I tell you this much, when I was playing all of these notes that I was doing, these proggy things, I wasn't getting any calls to play on any studio stuff.
Yeah.
Because
that actually makes sense. Yeah.
That's not what folks are looking for their songs.
No, they're looking for the Carol Kane and
well, they're looking for somebody to lay it down.
Yeah, play that groove, and stay there. That makes sense. When you have a song appear in your head, what instrument do you go to? Does it feel like it's going to? Do you switch it up, or does it always start on bass? Where do you? What's that methodology?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and that's something that was very unique on this album. Rewinding a little bit, I'd say historically, if I write on the bass or I write on a guitar, I tend to have the same bag of tricks that I always go back to, and
Gotcha.
Everything ends up sounding a bit the same. The thing that I'm loving now that younger people don't seem to understand because it's always been accessible to them, but I love keyboards. Okay. I love keyboards.
Yep.
And having access to like every sound imaginable is a new thing. In the 90s, we were freaking out if like we got vintage keys. There was a rack called Vintage Keys and it had like all of the sounds in it and stuff like that. We were like, oh my God, this has the sounds. Now you have access to everything. And so now when I'm writing now, the exciting part for me is to go, okay, what kind of sounds can I have? Because those sounds will influence what I do. So like when I said, like, when I laid my hands down on the keyboard, there was a piano tone, and it's not, I mean, piano tones are piano tones, but this piano tone was called atmospheric, and it had just this perfect resonance to it that I just hit 3 notes, dun, ding, dun, and I was like, oh, now this is writing the song for me.
Right.
But with the Soul Conversation, that one, it's an experience that I'd never had before. So, how crazy you want to get, Cedric?
Oh, as crazy as you want. Go for it.
Okay. This entire album is based off of a real life experience that I had, and I mean it is my story, and it is. I had a conversation with my soul. Okay. I can't explain it. I can't. It's not like we sat down and had coffee and talked. It's not like that. But there was messages that came through, things to make me think about, that made me shape the way that I was thinking about things, and I was in a deep depression, and it kept showing me things, and it was like, hey, basically the message that came down was, look, you're about to get off the ride before the best part, and I'd like to be here for the best part of it, so could you stick around maybe? It's basically what the message was. And this was like kind of presented to me over a series of several weeks. And then what happened is on the 5th week, this was about 4 weeks of kind of things coming down. And then on the 5th week, in one night, I wrote the choruses for 7 of the songs on the album.
Nice.
And I say that like it just popped into my mind, chords, lyrics, everything, to the point where I just had to run over and like, and I grabbed my phone and I just started like jotting it down. I grabbed the bass off the wall. Here's what the notes are that I'm hearing. And then, but it already was here, you know,
Right.
and I almost feel like I was just the conduit because I've never done anything like that before. I was just the conduit that the music came through.
Right.
It was almost like, hey, I'm gonna give you these songs. All right, go do something with them.
Yeah.
So in that instance, that's what happened is everything just kind of came at the same time, and call me crazy. But for me,
I call
no
it
matter
being visited
what,
by the muse. You know, when the muse lights on your head, you have to act on it. You can't ignore it.
well, not only that, but it's just it has completely changed my mindset. It's changed my way of thinking from being suicidal, being depressed, to going like, hey, no, I'm excited to live life, and no matter what that instance is, you know, and everybody has their own things that they have that turnaround moment. This is
Right.
my turnaround moment. So if you want to tell me like, Brian, you're crazy, fine, but my craziness is leading to me to my happiness right now.
Right. See, there's a connection in there. It's sometimes it's just the little things that appear, you know, that keep driving you forward. So, you know, when I listen to a tune I like, my thing, I have way too many guitars for somebody who can barely play. But a tune will come on, and the first thing I do when I'm interested is I'll look at the wall and I'll go, which instrument would fit this tune, you know, because I'm a Strat guy traditionally. You know, I have a couple of those, but then I also have a Les Paul and a Schecter, and you know, a ES339, a hollow body, and a Joe Pass, a jazz guitar, what have you. So sometimes it's just me sitting there going, maybe that would be better. Or I hear some kind of jam band type stuff. I'm like, okay, let me just grab the ES339, the hollow body, because that's probably going to have the most versatility, even though I'll never be, you know, Trey Anastasio or anybody like that. Let me just have something that sounds like it fits a little better, you know. So
And I think that there's something to be said about that. Like I obviously I still keep around a P bass, I still keep around a jazz bass, but I think for right now, for this at least the stuff that I'm writing and releasing under the name Brian Kovacs,
yeah,
I'm kind of like, this is my sound, this is what I'm going for. I did use so interestingly enough, like when we do some duo shows, cover band stuff.
right.
I use a fretless. I have a 5-string fretless, the same
Nice.
version of the bass that I play. At all other times it's fretted. I have the fretless model as well.
So
like that's something I just used on the new single.
Yeah.
Was that fretless bass sound, because I don't know, in my mind I go, it's a ballad. Let me try going Pino Palladino on this, you know.
Right. Makes sense. That makes sense. It's all about feel, you know, and if you feel it, you run with it. And I'm still learning a bit of that, but it's fun. Everybody, going back to the bass, you know, I bought a 5-string first, and I was like, oh, you know, you can get all you need with 4 strings. Why would you do that? Not really true, because there are times when that low B comes in handy. You know, Gail Dorsey.
I was a believer in that for years.
Yeah.
Years and years. I was like, yep, 4 strings. That's what it started with. That's all you need. In the Cyberiam, I was always in drop D, and we tuned down a half step. So I was in drop D, but it was really a C sharp.
Right.
But anyways, that was what fit for that band, at least at that time. But yeah, like I said, I just, for whatever reason, I just happened to play this 5-string, fell in love with it, and now I'm like really appreciating that low end. And also I think part of it is that hypnotic effect. Like I appreciate that low, repetitive, synth-like kind of repetitive line.
And you want to, like we talked about earlier, you want to use it judiciously. You don't want to get carried away, so that when you do play it, there's people kind of look around like, "Whoa, what was that?"
Mm-hmm.
That's a great feeling, you know.
Yeah.
With I keep coming back to Gail Ann because of the Bowie tunes I've been learning. There's a couple of them where you have to have the 5-string because the groove is so deep and, you know, so solid.
Well, and I think with the bass tone thing and everything, I guess bass in general is, I think, you know, you try to be all things to all people, and that's where I was in the past, right? You want to be like, oh, I can do this, and I'm going to use this on this song, and I'm going to try to be all things to all people. And then you've got Jocko, And I just watched a Marcus Miller documentary not too long ago. Marcus has become a huge influence to me in recent years.
Just an amazing player.
Absolutely. But, Marcus said, he had his lesson with Jocko. And when he went to go, Jocko was in the hotel room, happened to be in the same hotel as Marcus, and he calls Marcus's room and he goes, Marcus Miller, it's Jocko Pastorius. I'm in room 602. Come up here for your lesson.
Wow.
So Marcus is like, I grabbed my bass and I went for my lesson.
Yeah, drop everything.
So, so Marcus is playing for Jocko and he's like, what am I going to do? I'm not going to play a Jocko tune for Jocko. So he starts playing one of his things. Yeah. And he's slapping it and stuff. And Jocko's sitting there listening to it and he's like, yeah, I could do all that, but I don't. So, Jocko's tone was Jocko's tone.
Oh, God, yeah.
From the first note, that's Jocko.
Yeah.
He's got a very unique bass tone.
Don't even try to duplicate it because you can't. Between that and his hands,
Right.
That's him.
So Marcus did the same thing. It wasn't the same bass tone, but he said, I'm going to create a tone that is me. And so he's just like, I just roll up the low end, I turn up the high end, and that's that slap tone that you get from Marcus. That was then copied by everybody after that.
Well,
he said, this is my tone. This is how I want my bass to sound, And so I think that's kind of like where I'm at too, is not just with my bass tone, but just as far as like everything I'm doing is I'm saying like, hey, this is me. I'm going to present it as me. You like it or you don't, it's fine.
Yep. Yeah. Does guest starring on somebody else's work appeal to you? Somebody calls you and says, hey, I need a bass player for this kind of thing. Do you find that appealing at all, or do you kind of want to stick to your own work?
Oh, I've done it plenty of times, and I do enjoy it quite a bit because it forces me to think outside of my own box.
Yeah.
When you're songwriting, I still have a tendency of going like, okay, well, this sounds like a pre-chorus to me. This sounds like a chorus. This sounds like a verse. This sounds like this. When somebody sends me something and it flips everything upside down for me, I'm like, ooh, how am I going to handle this?
Yeah.
And I've had nothing but positive responses to any of the stuff that I've done, which is great. But I think it's also just because I try to keep in mind like what is going to serve the song best.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like it's that removing that ego. It's not like, hey, send me a song so I can go nuts all over it. No, we got to send me a song so I can give you what I think is going to be best to deliver this song.
Makes sense. Bill Bruford talked about that when he played with Genesis. He said, I did it all wrong. I thought the music was there to serve. I thought I was there to, the music was there to serve me, and I realized it was it's the other way around.
The other way around.
So it makes a lot of sense. And I'll be calling you for a guest appearance on one of my projects. It's
oh yeah.
There are things coming together here and there, and I have thoughts like who would be cool on this tune because I'm recording it at home on just a little 8-track, but I can do this, and this, and then I need to have a guest to handle this particular part.
And if nothing else, it's always a great excuse to communicate more. So yes. I'm always all about it.
Yes, I've been told I need to have more contact with people.
It's hard having adult friends as an adult, isn't it?
It really is. Everybody's got something else to do. They've got their kids, and they've got at my age, they've got their grandkids that they're keeping and what have you. And I got to do this with my wife or my husband. You can't get 4 or 5 people in the same room at the same time consistently. And I even learned that the first time I tried to form a band back in the back in the early 2000s. It was like herding cats. I could always get 3 people, but that 4th person, whether he's the bassist or the drummer, it just can't be there. And that's got to drive you crazy.
Well, it's not only that. Honestly, right now, it's a matter of folks who want to come to your show.
Yeah.
But can't. And honestly, I feel I'm going to be careful how I word this, but the prog community skews a bit older.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that being said, the reason that folks are able to go to Progstock and et cetera is they're empty nesters.
Yeah.
Their kids are out of the house. They're free now to go and do things. And that's what I'm finding recently too, is locally even. A lot of the folks that I haven't seen for years are finally coming back around, and they're like, hey, yeah, we're empty nesters now. So what do we do with ourselves? Come to the show,
that we got time now. That works. How do we bring
it's understandably difficult for people. I mean, everybody leads such busy lives, and honestly, like there's so much happening.
Yeah.
But that is something right now that I'm hoping to see kind of a return to is,
yeah.
It's the connection. It's first time I went to Marillion weekend. Okay, let me talk a bit. I'm going to talk about Marillion for you.
Yourself.
So Marillion has been one of my favorite bands for years.
Yeah.
And it was based only off of the recorded works. I'd never seen them live.
Yeah.
I had been listening to them since the 90s and, early 90s. And it wasn't until 2015 that I went to a concert. Because I was a working musician as well. So anytime they'd be in town, usually I was working already or whatever.
Right.
Just happened to catch it where they were in on a Thursday night, went to the show, and these songs that I had sung my heart out to by myself in my car on road trips are all of a sudden right in front of me. And I'm shoulder to shoulder with other people, and we're all having the same reaction. I'm bawling my eyes out.
Yeah.
They started singing Afraid of Sunlight, and that is a song that is like Afraid of Sunlight is like my go-to road trip song.
Okay.
That I will just belt out in the car with me, and he gets to that chorus and he starts belting it out, and I'm just full on ugly crying to the point where he's looking at me like, "You okay?"
I love this.
But
I get it.
But that experience is like, that was one thing. That was at a concert in Chicago. So there were some folks in the room that are, we're just there because whatever. It's the concert of the week. But going to the Marillion weekend, and the first time I went, I want to say was 2017, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
No, maybe. Can't remember. I want to say it was somewhere in there. But point is, it was the closest thing that I've ever had to a religious experience.
Fair enough.
3,000 people in the room, all hardcore fans of the band, because they only do these, like in North America, you had to go to Montreal.
Okay.
So if you were going to the Marillion weekend, you're a hardcore fan.
Yeah,
you're going to Montreal to go see them, unless you live in Montreal, which is then it's easy.
Yeah.
But the point is that like you're in a room with these people who are just all about what's going on, and like I said, it was moving. Boom, hit me in the chest.
Yeah.
And that's the appeal. I mean, the amount of times that band had people clapping along and singing along, and I was like, this is it. This is community right here.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the thing is like with Prog. With Prog, it's a bit tough to get folks clapping along when there's odd time signatures and they're not knowing where the beat is in the first place.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to clap at 11 unless you're like really keeping track of things.
And so like that was a thing that was very appealing to me. I mean, it moved me and it showed me what music could be. Again, it reminded me of what music could be, and it to me, I was like, this is what I want to be doing. I want to deliver this sense of community to people. And so like this show that I've got coming up now, like that's what I'm really focused on is I'm talking about this album that I wrote, and it's about, being suicidal and coming out of it. But the thing is it's like I've had friends who know me, and I told them what the album was about, and they were apprehensive to listen to it because they're like, I know you, and I was afraid because I thought it was going to take me to a dark place because of this. But the overwhelming response that I've had is like everybody's really surprised at how comforting it is.
The overall tone is not dark and moody. It's there's the phrase I said, there's hope, in that background. So I really enjoyed listening to it.
Well, thank you, sir. And that's what I'm really trying to go for, and that's what I'm trying to present at the show coming up. So I've got I've got the album that I'm doing, I've got the new single that I'm doing, I've got another new single that I'm going to be coming out, which is pretty funky.
Ooh, okay.
It's my bad Marcus Miller impersonation, but there's definitely some slap bass happening.
Yeah.
And then I've got a couple of choice covers that I'm throwing in that are not typical covers that you would hear anybody doing. So
this will be fun.
But it's kind of a whole like presentation, and then I've got Rozzy opening the night with her band. She's got a full band. She's going to be performing. Here's the thing. So Rozzy, for anybody who doesn't know, is my keyboard player, guitar player. Pretty much everything that I do. It's my girlfriend's daughter.
Yeah.
She's 18 years old. She's been in my band since she was 14.
Wow.
And she has put out already more albums than I have under my name at this point. And so I'm very excited about that. So she's opening the night singing her songs with a full band, and then she's joining me to play keyboards and a little bit of guitar, because nice. I do have another guitar player.
You have your own Tal Wakenfeld right there.
I tell you what,
the little youngster over in the corner that can tear it up.
She's of that talent level.
Nice. What's coming in the future? What you talked about what you're about to do. Is there another album out there somewhere, or are you gonna work this one for as long as you can?
No, I'm looking forward to writing again. And I really am looking to do it a lot more under a lot of different banners. Under Brian Kovacs, like I still am planning on releasing things that I feel are similar to what I've released under my name, and but I'm coming up with some other things that I feel I'm going to put out under some different names.
Right.
Just because it's going to be vastly different. Recently, I've really gotten into instrumental electronica type music, and at first it was actually something because they say that if you listen to music that doesn't have lyrics, like it's like that lo-fi, right? Like lo-fi chill stuff.
Yeah.
It actually helps your brain. When there aren't like lyrics to distract your brain, it actually calms you and raises your dopamine levels.
Agreed.
And so for me, I'm like, hi, I have low dopamine. I need to raise these levels.
Yeah.
So the thing that I started doing is while I was driving, I would be listening to this like chill electronica lo-fi type stuff. And I realized that my road rage went to 0.
Nice.
And I was like, people would be cutting me off, and I'm like, oh, it's fine.
Because you're captivated and calm now. Everything's okay.
So that's where it started. And now I'm just really appreciating all of the stuff that's happening there. And that's something that I'd like to experiment with on my own. In addition to like soundtrack music, I'd like to go in that direction a little bit more. But again, like it's things that I feel like I'm going to be maybe putting out under different names, because I feel like it's going to be pretty different from like what I've released under my name. And I'd like it if somebody looks up my name, they're going to find like other similar things to what I've done under my name, and not be like all of a sudden like, here's Brian Kovacs, this thing, and then all of a sudden there's this weird thing off to the side, So
it made me think of Buckethead, who released all this stuff under his name, but every once in a while he'd shift over to Death Cube K, and you would get almost a completely different sound. Really, really atmospheric, very slow paced and what have you. Like, this is Buckethead, really? But so each band is like a different personality. And
that's kind of it. And I think that like I spent a lot of time during COVID going to YouTube University, as I call it.
Funny, I'm a student there now myself.
And so I spent a lot of COVID going over like learning how to do mastering, and also just like mixing techniques and things like that. I was also looking at like color correction for videos, because you need to be able to do everything as a musician.
Yes, you do.
And I did actually. I'm the person who like put together all the concert videos for like the Cyberiam, all those concerts that we released as products. Nice. They were filmed by somebody else, and then I had to edit them together and do all that color correcting and all that stuff. So, anyways, I'm very much like interested in studio, and I have spent way too much money on plugins. Way too much money. I had to collect them all.
It's an addiction, man. You get one, you got to have all of them.
So, but I have great ones. So, like my album, I completely mixed and produced everything on that. I always send my mastering off to Andy Vendette.
Yeah.
Because he is a legend. So that whole thing started when we started the Cyberiam, which was in 2017.
Yeah.
And I looked up like my favorite records that I felt sounded the best. And it was like Porcupine Tree and Absentia, and Porcupine Tree, Dead Wing, and the Rush remasters, and all of this stuff. And it was like every time was Andy Vendette.
Yeah.
Saw his name on there. So I was like, guess who we're going to get?
So
I've had a working relationship.
In a way. Yes.
Yeah. So I've had a working relationship with Andy now for, coming up on a decade. And
Okay, I found this on the web for who's Steven Wilson. Check it out.
Okay, we will, but not now, Siri. We
Was that you?
I don't know. My Siri prompt didn't even come up, but this thing is haunted. Oh wait, I think it was my phone. That's funny.
Okay.
Thanks for that, Siri. I didn't ask for you anything, but this is a first in my interview.
I'm wearing headphones, so I'm like, did that come from me? And if so,
really,
where?
what the hell? They really are listening, people. I mean, it's not just the paranoia. We're all
okay.
Listening. Well, that was our event for the day. That's good times.
So the point is, thank you, Siri. But yes, Andy Van Det did all the mastering. So he's a fantastic gentleman, and he's helped me a lot. He's the kind of guy who, like, I've sent him mixes, and he'll send me a note and be like, hey, I know what you're going for, but you might want to adjust, and he'll give me frequencies. He'll be like, hey, turn the 300 down here and bring the 3000 up here. I'm like, okay, well. Nice. And so he's an excellent guy to work with. If anybody's ever looking for somebody for mastering, I definitely want to suggest you work with Andy, because he will make you sound like $1 million.
Makes sense. I like it. How picky are you about tone? I mean, are there in the range between, I guess, the Ramones and Eric Johnson? Where do you sit on having to dial in the exact perfect tone before you play?
I am very particular. It's just I'm very particular, but it's very different than what I've been doing. It's interesting because I was pulling I was looking on YouTube the other day, and I was trying to pull up something to show somebody, and I was looking at my name.
Right.
And it brought up some Cyberiam stuff, and it brought up some Cyberiam stuff from the tour that we did, the duo tour that Keith and I did with Riverside. And it was videos I hadn't seen before, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. I hadn't seen this one, and it was from Orlando.
Yeah.
And I clicked on it, and that bass tone was like, holy, it was like, I mean, it was huge and in my face. And I was like, that's what I was going for. I accomplished it.
I told you that's what I was hearing out there.
But and it did. It definitely carried through. But like I said, like now, it suited that music. And particularly in that environment where it's just me playing the bass, he's playing the guitar, and he's hitting a kick drum, with pedal thing.
Right.
So like just with the three of us, in that band, because we didn't have a second guitar player, I always said, like, I was the second guitarist in addition to being the bass player, because my tone would cover that frequency spectrum. I had a lot of, I had the low end locked down, but I also had that top mid-range kind of a thing going on with that tone. But now, like I said, I'm just in a different space. And so the tone that I'm looking for, and with the basses that I'm playing now, it's in a different department. Nice. We had a rehearsal for the show that's coming up, and I brought over a new rig, because we run everything on ears, and I brought this new rig over, and I couldn't get the thing running.
Oh,
unfortunately, we were at my guitarist's basement, and he's like, oh, we could just fire up the mixer, and we'll just run the rehearsal through this, and you can plug into this bass amp. We have this bass amp over here. So I did, and I fiddled, and I fiddled, and I fiddled, and remembering where the knobs were initially. That, by the way, that is another thing too. I don't just turn knobs without knowing where they were, and I returned everything back to the way that they were when I walked away. But in that moment, yes, I had to get everything like just dialed in just perfectly.
I don't blame you. I mean, I
think that's the thing, is like that's like my thing is like my ears. Like I hear things in a certain way, and I want them to sound that way, because of all of the mixing that I've done recently. Like I understand, like the sound spectrum, and like, hey, I want to leave room in the mid range for the vocals. I don't want to be fighting against them.
Yeah.
Which is something that we ran into a lot with the Cyberiam, because of the bass tone, the way that it was like, hey, you're fighting, like we can't hear the vocal because there's all this mid range happening between the guitars and the bass and everything. So
I thought of Boogie Nights. Do you think the bass is taking away from my vocal?
You got the touch.
It was so awful. But this is one of the reasons I definitely want you to come through, is because I'm playing consistently enough to where when I dial in a setting on my Boss, the GX100, which is wonderful, I used to have this massive pedal board, and now it's just kind of whittled down a little bit because all the sounds are in there. But still, I'll like a tone one day, and then I come back the next day, and I'm like, that sounds like reconstituted mud. I mean, what the hell is going on in there? So Of course, you go to the University of YouTube and try to figure out, what's going on. But I like it even better if I have somebody sitting next to me. No, that one. dial that one in. So
we can certainly do that. I have not used a bass amp in like 20 years.
Yeah.
I was a early adopter to amp sims, and I was like, hey, this is great. Like, I'm not the guy who would like just show up with just a bass and be like, oh, just DI me or whatever.
Yeah.
But I've always been a fan of the pedal board stuff. On like recently I would say recently, but on the tours that we did with Cyberiam, I was using kind of the Geddy Lee scenario.
Right.
Not necessarily. I had used some of his Sans amp stuff and I did enjoy it. But basically the concept is that you're splitting the signal off into two different signals. So you've got one that you can dial in your low end. So I would dial in my low end. I would put a little low octave on it so that it was really filling out that bottom. And then on the top end, then you just put the top end where you've got your distortion and then some chorus and making that really sweet. And then, blending the two together. So every time I was sending out to front of house, I was sending them two bass lines. I'm like, this is the top end, this is the bottom end. And that's how you got that huge sound.
Yeah.
But in the process of doing the album, I fell in love with Neural DSP's plugins.
Okay.
The Neural DSP guitar amp plugins sound like way beyond anything else I'd ever heard. And just like right out of, like, you just go to a preset and I'm just like, this thing sounds huge. And I didn't have to touch anything about it. And so actually Rozzy was the first one. She got the Quad Cortex.
Okay.
And so I was helping her get it dialed in, and I was like, wow, this thing sounds incredible. But I hadn't honestly heard any bass tones that I was really floored by.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna get a Quad Cortex to have in the studio here. And that way I've got it for my guitar stuff if I ever just want to plug in and just go that way instead of using the plugins, blah, 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 then I'll mess with it, whatever. Immediately I got it, and of course the first thing I did is plug my bass into it, and I was like, let me see what I can do with this thing. And now that's all I'm using is that Quad Cortex.
Makes
and
sense.
It's like, it just takes a matter of like getting it dialed in, but like I would dial it in different than Nate Navarro would.
Right.
So like the way that I want my tone is different than he's going to do it. And I know he's using the same box that I'm using, but yeah.
It seems like a lot more people are comfortable with the plugins these days. We're both of the generation where, people wanted to drag the big amps in and make sure they were mic'd up properly. And there's no way I'm going to use a computer because it can't capture my tone, but things seem to be changing a lot.
Well, I tell you what, and when we were at Progstock, there was, I'm drawing a blank, Unitopia.
Yes. The band that Chester was in.
Yes. All right, it was UPF or Unitopia?
Unitopia.
Okay, it was Unitopia.
Yeah.
And then to see like him out there using the Chapman stick, and he's using Gig Performer. He's actually going through his computer. He's using Gig Performer for his tone for that Chapman. Or it's not a Chapman stick. It's I forget which one it is.
War guitar or what was it? Marcus.
It's not a war guitar. Yeah, but whatever Don is using.
Okay.
Who, by the way, Don, fantastic guy. He was Elvis's last bass player.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amazing.
So he knows stuff.
Yes, he knows stuff.
Yeah.
And he has that stick instrument that he's using, that fingerboard instrument. But yeah, like he completely goes through a laptop. That's how he runs his sound through Gig Performer. And now, actually, since we started, playing my album live, I had to figure out how to take all of the keyboard sounds, because at any given time on my album, there's like 8 keyboard sounds going on at the same time.
Goodness, yeah.
So I had to figure out how to translate that live. So I actually had to get the same Gig Performer software that he's using,
right,
for the keyboards, so that we could have access to all the keyboard sounds that I'd used on the album in a live scenario. So I'm very much a fan of the technology that we're experiencing with all of this stuff, recording. I mean, I've been doing home recording since the 90s. Yeah. And at that time, I didn't even have a proper DAW. I had SoundForge, which was an audio editor, and I had to use mix paste. I had to put the cursor in a certain place and go mix paste, and it would paste it on there on top of the other waveform. That's how old school and broke ass musician.
That is crazy.
But that's the thing, I think, is like, honestly, I I think a lot of my knowledge level goes back to the fact that like I've been a broadcast musician my whole life, so I had to figure out how to do things on my own.
You got to improvise sometimes. I mean, one of the first machines I used was that 4-track Tascam, cassette recorder. And I've had 2 guitar renaissances. The first one went from like 96 until like 2007, and that's when you're buying the drum machines if you're playing on your own, and you're buying the samplers and all this other kind of good stuff. So now that I'm playing again, I'm trying to do the same thing, and then it dawns on me, dude, you've got GarageBand. Just dig in there and find what you need. And sure enough, the things I need are sitting right there. So it's an adjustment. So
well, I thought I was on the cutting edge when I got a Yamaha 8-track that would run off of data mini discs.
Oh yes, the mini disc.
Now, because it was breaking that mini disc into 8 tracks, you could only record for 11 minutes.
Yeah.
But
but you got it. You got that kind of thing. So
yeah, when I got that thing, I spent like $1,200 on it. And I was like, this is the cutting edge of technology. And then the next year they were like, yeah, mini discs are out the door. I was like,
yeah. What's the one they were using for so long where you would put you would use a videotape, to record. You know what I'm talking about.
That.
Yeah, that's it. A lot of musicians using that.
ADAT, if you're talking about the big ones, yeah.
Yes. I mean, I'm like, wait a minute, are we watching movies? No, we're recording we're recording this record. So it's and the technology changes so quickly.
Yes, I had those experiences like going into studios in the 90s and the whirring of the VHS looking machine.
It's a mess. It's an absolute mess, but you have to adapt with the times, I suppose. I mean, is there anything you use that's kind of old school that you're not going to let go of?
My ears.
It's a good start.
Yeah.
that's a good start.
No, I think honestly at this point, I know that I'm more fascinated by new technologies. I've been using in-ear monitors, like I said, and a SANS amp or an amp simulator of some sort for better part of 2 decades now. There was a guy who allowed me to play his bass that had this thing called Backbeat.
Okay.
And it's a wearable subwoofer. It goes on your strap and goes on your back. And every time you hit a bass note, it vibrates to that frequency and you feel it through your whole body. And I was like, I need that. Because immediately, so he had a Dingwall bass. So that's the multi-scale. Okay. So that was why I was playing it in the first place. I was like, all right, let me check out this multi-scale thing, whatever. So I was playing it, and then he goes, okay, now check this out. And as I'm playing it, and I'm playing it unplugged, I'm just messing with it. And he kicks that thing on, and immediately, I just lightened up my playing because I didn't have to push through. And I think that's the thing is when you're not feeling the bass, you dig in more.
Yeah.
And then you're hurting your fingers, But immediately, once I felt that vibration, I just lightened up my playing, and I was like, I don't have to do that. I feel it. It's all right here. I know what I'm doing,
That's nice.
So that's something that I'm definitely looking to pick up that I have not yet, but I am all about the new technology.
Nice. We could do this all night. And
we could.
Probably will.
We will.
At some point, but I'm going to let you off the hook here and go ahead and plug yourself. What do you want the people to know? Where can we find your music? Have at it.
Okay, Plug Party. Plug Party goes, The Soul Conversation. My name is Brian Kovacs. The Soul Conversation is available. It has been since last December. It is 8 tracks. It is 42 minutes exactly. So if you have 42 minutes to spare, please check it out. I think it will leave you in an uplifting mood by the time you get to the end of it. Beyond that, let's see. They Laughed, You Loved, also single, just released on all the streaming services as well, Spotify, what have you. And going to be releasing another single shortly. We got a show coming up. I don't know when you're going to release this, but June 14th, the Saturday night, Aurora, Illinois, June 14th. We're really hoping you'll join us at the Venue in Aurora. Okay. It is just called the Venue, and it is a fantastic venue. Very excited to be doing the show there. And this is kind of a big deal show because, like I said, we're going to be filming this one for a future release, video release, and audio. So we're hoping to get a lot of folks in that room and just get some good vibes going for the show.
Sounds like I need to be there for that one.
I think so.
I'm gonna figure that one out real quick.
Please do, sir.
We will see what is what. But Brian Kovacs, thanks for hanging out.
Thank you, sir.
I really appreciate it. This is good time. We're gonna have to do a part 2 somewhere down the road.
Let's do that.
And It's really enjoyable talking to you as always. We're going to room again at Progstock somehow, some way, someday, because it's just too much fun.
Or we just wait until we get really old. We'll just hit the same nursing home together.
That works too.
It works.
It's going to be very loud in our corner, but that's okay.
We'll finally get that recording done.
Exactly. That would be a plus. Thanks, my man. You take care of yourself.
Take care, man.